Alright, welcome to today's Video Signals AMA, which I'm probably going to rename to just AMA next time I put together a season of promotions for this. But that's the images I have made already, so that's what this is going to be called. So yeah, I've got a question submitted today. I'm going to put this in the chat here because it's a bit of a longer one, so might kind of last for a moment. But yeah, this is a question that Tad emailed me, and they wrote, so how do you feel about the potential for someone who has built one of my things on their own and is selling it on like eBay or Reverb or something, either for profit or because they just no longer wanted it or needed it? They say it doesn't seem right to me, at least per profit, but I also haven't noticed any licensing terms. Are my views on this different for derivative devices? For example, if someone was running a for-profit business selling video synths that were modified hardware / software versions of what I did, or different but derivative code running on the same or different hardware. For all I know, this has already happened. If some of this is not okay with you, is there an approximate line past which you would be comfortable with this sort of activity? So this is a pretty good question. The short answer is, if you're selling something that you bought from me, I don't really give a shit. Like, you bought it, it's yours, you're gonna sell it now, like, that's sort of it. If you're selling something you built just as a one-off, like you built your own DIY setup and you are sick of it and you need some cash and you notice that there's not a lot out there, sell it. I don't really give a shit. Like, go for it. If you're starting a business and your business plan is just selling like wave pools, that's kind of lame. But also that's really, really unlikely, and I'll kind of go into why like that hasn't really been like a huge concern for me. And if you want to do something that is derivative, I mean, yeah, people have made sort of derivative things of stuff that I've designed. And yeah, there isn't really a hard line of like, this is okay, this isn't okay. Like, my thing would just be like, if you want kind of like a blessing from me on like selling like a derivative of something I've made, like, you've really got to kind of like make it something like noticeably different. Like, there's one thing that exists out there that's just kind of a reduced version of like the video feedback stuff, which is a derivative product, and I don't really think that's that interesting. It's like a reduced, like it's derivative and it just does less than what my stuff does, which is sort of like, yeah, I guess, like, but like realistically, like if someone's putting all the work into like doing the whole like business, making money from selling video synths, like you're already someone who like is sort of like in it because you like it. You're not just trying to make a buck. Because yeah, I mean, the whole thing is like, realistically, and let this just be like a warning for everyone out there who like thinks that like, who has it in the back of their head like, oh, I could just like make a bunch of money like selling redesigned open source like video synth projects, which I know there's at least one or two shops out there I've seen that are pretty much just like someone takes open source like DIY circuits and other sort of DIY designs and just kind of like slaps some packaging on it and like adds like one or two like, oh, it's now audio reactive or something, or something a little like one extra thing to be like, this is my personal touch. Like, that's like not super interesting, and you're probably not going to stick with it very long, and you're also probably not going to make like very much money off of it. So like the whole thing, like anyone who thinks you're just going to like kind of like jump into it and just like be able to like take existing designs and somehow like make like a decent, like even make like a decent hourly wage off of it is kind of like fooling themselves. Like, for me, when I got started selling things, it's not like I'm just like some bozo who came out of the blue, dropped out of like nowhere and said, oh, by the way, I have like this like video synth, the Raspberry Pi video synth that I'm selling. Everyone come check this out. Because that's not what happened. At that point, like I was already like a fairly well-known like artist and like event person in like the video like the USA video art community and like glitch art community. Like I had a lot of friends all over the world. Like people already kind of like had a good sense of who I was as a reputation because like I'd like design like weird cool software and code projects and made them all open source, shared everything in multiple ways, helped people out trying to like run like the various sorts of like software things that I designed. So like I was already like people already like knew who I was and liked me, like a large enough number of people, so it wasn't just like I sort of like came out of the blue. And like the whole time since I've been like selling things, like people also know who I am because of like the YouTube channel and like doing like the face space events. Like it's not like all I did, like you can't really just be like, oh, I'm just gonna like make a shop on Etsy, put it up there, and like people are just gonna like find it like on their own. Like that's not gonna work, especially not with something like as like esoteric and kind of like out there as like video gear. Like you kind of already have to be like in like some sort of a community, you have to be contributing in some sort of a way, and like you have to have like some basic amount of like reputation and goodwill going for you. It's like that exists beyond just like I'm selling some shit on Etsy for like people to even kind of really give you the time of day to start with. Cause yeah, it's just not really like a big ticket world. It's not a big like none of the videos and stuff is like big ticket items. Like, it's just really impractical to be like, I'm some random person who has nothing to do with Andre, and I'm just gonna like put together like a wave pool business and somehow sell wave pools. Like that's just not gonna happen. That's very like just not a concern. In terms of like licensing, I think the whole thing of like licensing is like total bullshit. Like I'm not gonna fucking sue anybody. Like I'm poor. I don't have any relatives who are lawyers or anything. Like the whole idea of like getting a lawyer to go after someone, like from me, like what would I be going after them for? Like fucking like $1,200 or something? Like that's like pretty nonsense. If someone's actually making like a serious profit off of like selling a derivative of a wave pool or something, they also probably are like working for a company that has like lawyers or something, and like I'm already fucked. So like there's not really like any sense in me trying to like lawyer up or like protect myself with like a bunch of like paperwork bullshit. I think the whole thing of like some people have gotten really angry at me about like not like adhering to the conventions of like open source licensing. Like I don't know if anyone's ever like looked into all this sort of stuff of like Creative Commons, public domain, like all the different little like kind of like minuscule sort of variations on like how like people like try to like put software things. This is mostly just software stuff. Put these things out there and like try to like I don't know hedge their bets and make it very clear like how all those things works. And it's like ultimately like I don't fucking own this code. Like I wrote it and it's out there in the world and anyone can do whatever they want. And that's the same thing with the whole kind of design of like the other thing is that like some people like sort of like say somewhat derogatively and accusingly that like all I do is like write software, which isn't really true. Like to a certain extent, like I understand why people are saying that, but like the whole wave pool thing is like it's a cohesive system that was intentionally designed. And it's intentionally designed to be really fucking easy to put together and to work with a wide range of things, which is like like some people have sort of been like sort of like somewhat like, oh, it's lame to just sell a Raspberry Pi. You should at the very least have designed some sort of like circuit that goes on top of it that has like a bunch of knobs or something just to like make it sort of more of like your own thing. which is like that's like the IZ and all like the Critter and Guitari stuff. That's all like as far as I can tell, just Raspberry Pi stuff with like custom controller things like built around it, so you can't see that there's a Raspberry Pi in there. To which I'm just kind of like, yeah, maybe, but like that whole thing just like creates like a much larger obstacle to anyone who's like trying to put one together. If you also then have to like do all this other shit on top of it, and it's also like making like a bunch of like extra like what seems to me like somewhat unnecessary work on my part to like get things going. Like I see the point, I see where they're coming from, but like ultimately I disagree with it. um, let's see. So like licensing, like I just don't really play that game. Like my whole thing is like I'm not there. It's never gonna go to court. Like why would I even like waste 1 second of like my time even thinking about what's the appropriate license? Because like I said, if you ask me like how I actually feel about it, there isn't actually like a hard and clear line of what's going on. Like if you're making a derivative work, like it should really probably be open source. If it's not open source, you're pretty fucking lame. But I also think everyone should be making all of their designs open source. I think it's kind of foolish, and all of the designs will eventually become open source or public domain, whether they like it or not. So that's just kind of like the way the world works. Like, and what else? Yeah, I guess that's probably about it for like my thoughts on that whole thing. Like, so yeah, any other questions out there in the world? You got me for about another 40 minutes here. Jer says, I purchased Video Wave secondhand on eBay, and my work has inspired them a bunch. Ordered Temporal Vortex to the website in January, and hope you keep doing it. It's reassuring to hear a chill attitude towards expression and creativity. Well, yeah, I mean, it's like it's not really any skin off of my nose. Like if people want to like sell their used things, or if people are just doing like these like 1 or 2 off like sales on like Reverb or like eBay, like just do it, like if like you've got one sitting around and you need an extra $200, just like go for it. Like not a huge deal. If you think you're gonna like try to set up a whole shop and like do it all like that, like a full-time thing, like just don't. Trust me, it's not. There's so much more work that goes into like trying to sell things that people just kind of like don't really appreciate. Like the upcharge I do on like the devices is it's not just for like an hourly in terms of like how much work does it take me to like put it together and test it and ship it out. It's like also just like literally like how much work is it to like advertise, to like keep people excited about things, to maintain a website where I have like promotional materials, just to like keep up with all of like the sort of like ambient like work that you have to do just to manage a shop. Because it's not just, some people think like you make a device and you just like put it up for sale somewhere and that's like all it takes. It's like all those like people who think like, oh, I made a really good album on Bandcamp, I just put it on Bandcamp, and then if it's really good, it'll just get popular. It's like, no, it's not. Like, you actually have to have, like, some sort of, like, social engagement, like, beyond just, like, what you're doing with, like, putting something out there for anyone to actually give a shit about it, because that's the internet. You can just, like, put your shit out there anywhere, but you're just, like, it's just, like, pissing in the ocean, like... If you're just doing it by yourself, no one's gonna know that anything happened. All right. Any other questions on the? I guess maybe on this topic of like derivative licensing or anything. I see somebody typing. Bought IZ and Sleepy Circuits, Hypno before discovering my stuff, and they really are our Raspberry Pis with private boards. Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. I mean, like it's there's a lot of things out there that are just sort of like single board computers plus like some kind of like ADC, and that's sort of like the original thought I had for like the wave pool and the Viserpi thing is that I would sort of like pump it out into like something that had that kind of like board thing on it, but like yeah, it just was like, I don't know. I didn't really want to like hide what it was because I feel like to a certain extent like hiding the device itself doesn't really do it any service, and it makes it, I think, 1,000 times cooler to be like, yeah, and you also just have literally like a really useful tiny computer with like a Linux operating system on it that works pretty darn well that you can play with too. Like, I feel that's like a bonus. That's not like something like to be disguised. That's something to like lean into. Like, I know for a fact that like at least like a couple hundred people are like more likely to like be interested in using like nano computers and like open source operating systems and open source software because of Viserpi. So like that's pretty sick. But yeah, I don't really know much about the Critter and Guitari folks. Their stuff is sort of like it's never been like super inspiring like on its own, but I think they work really well in like larger systems. Like if you've got mixer feedback or a wave pool going with those as a source, I think they can be pretty gnarly. Um, Hypno, I've met Ron. Ron's super cool. I think the Hypno is really great. I think their new thing, the MIDI controller thing and the Vid OS thing is like really fucking slick. Like everything I see out of that, I'm just like, that's next level. And you know, I think they did a really smart thing by just being like, we're gonna design like this custom controller that actually works with like a whole bunch of other things, and then also like design it around like something that works on like iPads and like phones and shit, which is like pretty genius to like bypass that whole fucking run it on a single board computer, because like people already have something around that can use it, and like it's really leveraging like the computing power of like something you probably already have in your pocket already. So that's pretty sick. I'm hoping to try to figure out some kind of like quick and easy way that the new like that the Sleepy Circuits MIDI controller will just like work easily with my stuff too. That's on my docket of like things to finish up before this before the my sort of development spring development push ends up. um, are the HD ports designed to make use of a second display like Gravity Waves does? If not, how feasible would it be to use as a duplicate of the main output? Um, which one are we talking about here? What HD ports are we talking about? Um, the delay. Oh, I think we're talking about the ports, the Viserpi ports to the VSC Jet. So yes. So so what I have right now running for all the ports is very simple. It's just one display, and that's just like only just the output. So the ports as they stand right now and as they're going to be released, when I start shipping stuff in like April and May, they're going to work exactly like the Viserpi ones do, but just on the VSC Jet. So just one display, no two display things. If you run it, if you want to run just like the people who are testing things are just running the code sort of on their existing Gravity Waves setup. And that just works with like the second monitor, the default one that you use. If you use Gravity Waves, you have like the second monitor that's just your video output, and that's what they do. And the other one just kind of like sits there and does nothing. Thoughts I had on long term, would it might be cool to like add some, if I wanted to add anything extra, which would most likely just be like LFOs. And if I was going to add anything extra to the Viserpi ports to VSC Jet, I would add LFOs, I would add save states, and yeah, just those two things. And that would probably require a GUI. But I'm sort of like, weighing like whether or not it makes sense to like add things to that, or just to like make something different that sort of is building off of them. So like for the moment, like Gravity Waves is sort of like, you know, the super juicy, like crazy updated version, complicated updated version of like Video Waves and like Wave Pool and shit. And I kind of like to do something similar that like plays off of what Artificial Life does, just to have like a giant sort of like video oscillator, massive unit thing. That does things a little more slicker because the controls, using just the nano control for Artificial Life is like definitely like a thing that like freaks a lot of people out. It's a lot of things to memorize. So having like some kind of GUI thing for that would probably be handy. But yeah, for right now, what it is just like just video output, no GUI interface whatsoever, and I don't know. Probably won't, but we'll see how I feel in a year from now when I do more development on stuffs. All right. Any other questions while you got me here? What's in my tea these days? So I get my tea from McNulty's down in Greenwich Village. It's a really really nice shop. It sounds like an Irish tea shop, but like everyone there is Chinese, I believe. It's mostly Chinese tea with some Indian tea. It's when I was living in the city. Well, I was living in Brooklyn, but I would like had some like tea friends. I'd go around and like go down to like Chinatown and like various like specialty tea and spice shops while I lived there, and just like, you know, try to find like the freshest, best tasting tea. And McNulty's was the one I stuck with, and they do mail order. Their shit is really really fresh. What I'm drinking right now is I think Pailu Chun. It's a green tea. It's a white tip green tea. It's very light, aromatic, citrusy, with a slight hint of like grassy undertones. Yeah, super super banging. I could do tea talk for a while. I try to drink a different kind of tea every day too, because I'm sort of like weird about caffeine, and I want to like not get used to too much. I used to drink just like coffee, 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 like all day, all night kind of deal, and had to like quit that because it was giving me headaches all the time. And then I like started drinking tea, and then quit tea for a couple months, and I was just like, oh yeah, you can, if you, the whole thing about living without any caffeine whatsoever is you're just kind of sleepy constantly. You don't actually get like any stimulant ride whatsoever. So I was like, yeah, I'm gonna definitely drink tea again. So drink a mixture. I'll switch it up between black tea, oolong, and green tea, like sort of like every other day kind of deal. So that's tea talk. Any other questions? Let's see. While people are asking, I've got this. I'm gonna get this laminated and put it in my wallet. But I just have this sitting next to my computer station. I've had it here for like 2 months. It's honestly like one of the most, like, it just brings me joy every time I see it. It's from like a Reader's Digest book of like mysterious telekinetic psychic powers thing, and I just love it. It's just this mystery face that researchers claimed a face was drawn on a ping pong ball while inside of a sealed glass jar, and this is the face. That's so amazing. All right, some people are asking questions, waiting for the typing to be typed up. Aside from longer delay times, what, if anything, does Wavepool HD offer that Gravity Waves doesn't? I mean, the most obvious thing that Wavepool HD offers that Gravity Waves doesn't is you don't need to use a GUI or jump through menus to do anything. It's all right there. For everyone who's ever used Wavepool before, you don't have to learn anything different. It's very immediate, and it's kind of like get up and go. So having it already be kind of like designed around you're just having the controller, that's sort of like I think the biggest thing that like makes like Wavepool HD like not like better than Gravity Waves, but just like it definitely fulfills a different purpose. And I think for most people, until they start getting into the save states and the macros, which I'm probably going to be sending out some stuff for beta testing in the next week or so for save states and macros with Gravity Waves. That's going to be the big thing that like you can take it out and you can do performance with it in a way that like I think a lot of people don't want to do with Gravity Waves now, because you have to build everything up kind of like from scratch every time. As like I think a friend of mine was joking, it's like the worst of both worlds, digital and modular. It's like you have to, with like modular stuff, you really like you either have to leave everything patched exactly the same or like repatch everything for a live show. But then it's also digital, so you have to like go through a bunch of menus to get everything. But that's all gonna be fixed up soon. There are sort of like two things that are in Wavepool and Wavepool HD that aren't in Gravity Waves. There's the video active controls, where you can use the input, your video input, as like sort of a modulation source within Wavepool, within the feedback itself. Which is not in Gravity Waves. So that's something that's like pretty radically different, and that's something probably not going to add to Gravity Waves anytime soon, just because there's so much that would be like literally like probably about 2 months worth of work for me to like add that in with all the fucking parameters we've got on there. The other thing is this sort of like MIDI looper thing where you can just like press a button and it'll just like loop like your MIDI inputs. So it's kind of like the laziest kind of like draw your own LFO thing I could figure out. That's only in like the Viscerbi, and that's going to be in all the VSE Jet ports. That doesn't exist in Gravity Waves. Gravity Waves just has LFOs, which is like kind of its own cool thing. So yeah, those are some like pretty unique things. The color, the way, and I guess the way that color is processed in Wavepool HD is like quite a bit different than how it's like handled in Gravity Waves. The weird color stuff that I added in there isn't really in Gravity Waves the same way it is. So that's another unique thing. Yeah, and there's probably a bunch of other stuff. I ended up cramming a lot of things into Wavepool that I never really like, that I forget about until like I go and like look at the manual or something. So it's probably like more stuff in there that I don't know about. Carrie asks, do you have any video on video art that can cause seizures, precaution to take for eyes? Sometimes I give myself a headache from staring at feedback, glitchy stuff for too long. So to the best I know about like video stuff causing seizures, and this is like, I'm not like a fucking expert or nothing, like, so like you have to take everything I say with like a grain of salt. The best I know is that 60 hertz strobing does not really cause seizures. The strobing I think has to be like slower than that, around like 8 to 15 or so. And the reasoning behind my thoughts on that is that if 60 hertz strobing gave people seizures, then everyone who then like CRTs wouldn't have been able to like be a mass-produced item in the United States. Same thing for 50 hertz strobing for like CRTs in the rest of the world. Because there is like basically like a subliminal kind of like strobing there, and that's also the same thing with like LED light bulbs now. Is that LED light bulbs, most of them, sometimes you can't quite tell the strobing unless like you like, sometimes like one way to like tell if your LED light bulb is like strobing at 60 hertz, and I've noticed this, is if it's in kind of like a different room and you close your eyes and you just kind of like will see like sort of like a banding, it's like something like a fan going over like a light bulb in the corner of your eyes. You can see that, or if you like take a picture with your phone and you see like a weird kind of like that weird pattern that happens when it like aliases with the with the LED lights. So I don't think 50 hertz, 60 hertz strobing is like a severe cause like for seizure. Just because if it did, people would be having fucking seizures all the time because we've been since we've had like light and video sources that run at like 60 and 50 hertz for like the past like 70 years that have been like pretty common in like a lot of places. People would be having seizures all over the place. And then there was that thing in Japan where there was an episode of Pokemons that gave a bunch of kids seizures, and I think the kind of like strobing rate within that was like about 12 hertz or something. So that's just kind of that's my like reasoning behind. I think around like 10 to 15 hertz is sort of the danger zone for strobing causing seizures and video stuff. Again, like this isn't really something that you can like do a lot of like field testing and research on because nobody's gonna like test on humans to give them seizures for obvious like ethical and medical reasonings. As far as like giving yourself like a headache from like staring at things, what I've noticed more so personally, I don't really get like the eye strain thing that a lot of people get. But I do get headaches if my neck is rigid and my shoulders are tight and I'm like physically kind of like focused on something. So I get these kind of like tension migraines something if I don't fucking relax. So I think a big thing that might be going on for like people who notice if you're working on video stuff for like hours and hours at a time and you're also kind of like shoulders up, neck tensed, kind of like in a weird like position like going right at the screen like that could be a big part of it too. A lot of other people say like I don't think I have this kind of sensitivity, but I also just might have like really bad vision as well in terms of like the kind of light that you're looking at. So like you can get like blue blockers. Try like just a pair of blue blockers or something to sort of like filter out some of the other frequencies of light and see if that makes a difference. But yeah, for me, it's just mainly been about like I started doing like more yoga like 5 years ago because of like some severe back and neck problems. And my big takeaway from like doing yoga a lot is that you actually don't have to do that much yoga and stretching if you just like don't unnecessarily tense up your body all the time when you're working on like art things. Just try to like relax your shoulders and relax your neck and keep your spine straight. And that's if you're staying still, but otherwise just try to like keep moving around too and like keep loosey goosey, don't tighten up that much. And then yeah, try to like put some filters on your eyes if you feel like you're getting a lot of like severe eye strain. And then maybe also just like don't look at strobing things, anything strobing for like a long enough time because that's just gonna like your irises will just be adjusting way too much, and that's probably not good. So yeah, that's I guess like the best advice I can offer on that. All right, any more questions? Probably stick around here for another 15 minutes or so. Yeah, I guess in terms of like Carrie says, it's hard to be in a good posture at the desk, hunched over a mixer. I think it makes a pretty good difference on like intentionally setting up where you're going to be like working on things at, so you're just not in a shitty position. Um, and that's kind of like the biggest takeaway too I have of like not having like severe carpal tunnel what's that shit? Pinched nerves in your neck and back all the time. I didn't just have pinched nerves from like doing the coding and like programming stuff. That was mostly from getting hit by cars and shit. But none of anything else I was doing in life made it any better. Quality Apology asks, is there a good place for novice coders or non-coders to start, or good resources for changing basic elements of the code? So for basic elements of my stuff, reassigning MIDI controls or playing with some of the more processing-based stuff. For reassigning MIDI controls, that's something that I know like a lot of people like have worked on before. That stuff is I mean, it's hard. It's easy for me to say it's really simple. It's decently well documented in most of the code, like how the MIDI stuff is working. Not so well in Gravity Waves. I'm not sure. I don't know. I haven't really dug into the Gravity Waves MIDI stuff in so long. But in terms of like how stuff works on the Viserpi, it's not very hidden, but it is just kind of like there's a lot of sort of like if and thens kind of deal. But it really just kind of comes down to like if you look up, so on the manuals for all the Viserpi stuff, where you see there's just like a list of like a little like image that shows what all the MIDI CCs are and how they map to like all the buttons and knobs on the controller. The place I would start with is just like in the MIDI section of the code, look for those CCs and kind of see how each one of those CCs gets mapped to something else. And the simplest thing, if you want to like reassign MIDI controls to like work with a different controller, is just make a copy of the code and then just like draw like a little like schematic of the other controller that you want to remap things to. Make sure you know what all the CCs are, and then just kind of like write down sort of like a table of how you're going to reassign things. Change the numbers, the MIDI CC numbers over on the in the code, and then just like try it out and kind of like keep going back and forth until like that kind of makes sense. This is also something that folks in the Discord probably like would be able to help with, because like I think reassigning and like messing around with the MIDI stuff is like a pretty common thing that people play around with. In terms of changing like changing some of the processing, pretty much all of the processing in the codes is going to be on the shaders, and that's going to be like in there's like a shaders, a GLES folder. You'll find like something with a dot frag and something with a dot vert. Those are the shaders. And in terms of playing around with that stuff is not probably mostly not as well documented as anything else. It actually might be easiest to experiment with that stuff on like the desktop video waves or in Gravity Waves, because in those in the sort of like larger ones I have, a lot of the shader code is all sort of like turned into smaller functions. And I think there's even like a thing, I think I've published this on my GitHub, that's just like general shader utilities, like just basic functions that I use over and over again when I'm programming, and like starting with those kind of things and like just seeing what's going on in there and like tweaking values and stuff is like probably like a good way to get started, like understanding how to like modify things on inside of the code. So that's probably a good place to start. And if you want to understand what's going on with the C++ side of things, Open Frameworks is sort of like the general like system of libraries that I'm working in for C++, and they have a ton of tutorials on things. I'm using it for actually very little, mostly the Open Framework stuff, except for Temporal Vortex. Most of the Open Framework stuff, the C++ stuff, is really just kind of like handling memory and handling any analog information from outside of the unit, and turning that into information that the shaders can use in a useful way. But Open Frameworks is pretty cool, and there's a lot of cool stuff you could do with it that I sort of just like don't even bother with, because it's like you can do cool graphics stuff with it, but most what I've sort of like learned from like libraries is like very few graphics, like computer graphics libraries, are actually good for video synthesis because they're already sort of like, once you package things up into like shapes and polygons and like that kind of stuff, you're already sort of like too far away from the raster to really be able to like be doing like what I would call proper synthesis. You're kind of like working with like geometric primitives and you're working with geometry, but you're not really working with the raw raster. And that's sort of like where I see like a big difference being from like video synthesis and just like general like cool computer graphics stuff is, are you working with like geometry primitives and like stuff like that, or you're working just direct on the raster? I think we got time for probably like one more question before I pop off and get back to work on Gravity Waves shit for another 8 hours today. Well, I don't see anybody typing, so I guess that'll be it for today. Yeah, this went pretty well. Reminder, you can send questions in advance to the Polyphase email. You can send questions to me, and I'll cover them next time we come back together for the AMA. So I'll be doing the AMA in April. I'll be doing another one in May. I'll probably be able to do another one in June, and then I'll be taking some time off in the fall to do some more touring stuff and taking in like an actual vacation at some point. And then come back together to this in the fall. All right, I'll talk to y'all's next month.